today we have a very interesting panel amongst everybody. I'd like everybody to introduce yourselves, starting from the end.
I am. Is this on? You gave me?
Yeah.
I'm Doctor. No, I'm not a doctor. I'm joking. I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you. My name is Jamar Allen. Long time customer friend and client, therapy client for Jim. I think I was probably his first test patient with this whole barbershop therapy thing. But just excited to be here and among some good people. Hopefully coming up with some great ideas.
I go by the name of Chulo. I'm a songwriter, children's book author, co-owner of a lifestyle brand called Self Love. I'm also a customer of Jimmy's, long-term friend. Thank you for being here.
My name is Bla1 Harris, licensed clinical mental health counselor, owner of G Square Consulting and Counseling Services, author, speaker, friend to Jimmy, and I am excited about the opportunity to be here and speak with you all today.
Now, first and foremost, I'd like to say thank you to the Brothers of Kappa for letting us use their facility and allowing us to come into this space and do this important work. I want to tap this thing off with saying we're talking about mental health. And mental health has multiple facets, and as Black men, we often get overlooked in that space. As fathers, as husbands, as just interpersonal relationships, we don't know how to operate emotionally and outside of just working through our feelings with, just different components in mental health. So I'm gonna have Mr. Matthew read off the first question that we're gonna attack in this particular situation.
Okay, so first question is hip hop music, R&B music, and how is it breaking down the fabric of Black culture?
Good question. So we got two artists up here, and I'd like y'all to start off with, attacking that question first.
I'll start. So it's a pretty layered question. So as far as the fabric of Black culture, hip hop and R&B is a part of Black culture, but not Black culture in totality. So it's good to remember that because there are some messages and some imagery that's portrayed to look like us, but it's more caricature based than actual Black culture. So we do have the good side of it, which we have to tap into, which is not always the most commercialized, but it does exist still. So I know the good thing about playlists, and now everybody can go in the car and listen to what you want to hear. So whether it's Al Green, whether it's Anita Baker, whether it's or Future, you know what I'm saying? You have the option of listening to what you want to listen to. But as far as the fabric, we do have artists whose focus is to make sure that they give out their authentic selves, right? But again, it's not always popularized because people are not incentivized to do so a lot of times when they're signed to either a major label or there's another message being pushed, right? So myself, I can speak for myself. I'm really cognizant of making sure that I can stand on this message for years to come, right? Because I look back at some of the decisions I made. It's not like I'm guilty of any decisions I made or regretful, but it's more so like, okay, from now moving forward, what do I do to make sure in the next 15, 20 years I feel comfortable making this move? The words I say, the imagery I portray, even how I speak about women, right? Because that's a big thing. My mother, God bless her soul, she was my biggest fan, right? And so she was very cognizant about the way that I speak about women, right? Because I was raised by majority women. So these are the people who are going to be listening to my music a lot of the times. So, but that turned into me speaking the highest about our Black women because it's so much of the negative side speaking about them that's popularized. And we got to remember that someone's always looking. And a lot of times people who have never met a Black person in some of those small pockets of the world, they're looking at the artist as our representation.
That's right.
Right. So it's good to be cognizant of that. And I don't want to hog the mic. I'll let you,
Oh, you speaking facts. No. I don't think any of us gonna reject any knowledge. But I definitely feel like it's definitely an art that can be weaponized in a couple different ways. And I think when some people realize how powerful it was, I think for sure they decided to put their foot in on it, because you can think back to James Brown and Marvin Gaye and all these people who were activists, in their art and in their community. And I always think about the movies when they tell the stories like, don't perform that song, so and so and so. Even you can go to NWA when they was like, don't perform this song, because they knew it was gonna do. But it spoke of it spoke of the life we was living. You know what I'm saying? Like it was a reflection of where we were. And I think when they realized how powerful that was and what it did as far as bringing us together, of course they're gonna kind of alienate it and say, all right, cool, we're gonna use this as a tool to spread some negative information. Unlike Chulo, at the early stages of my life, I didn't speak so highly of women, because I was mad at them. I was unhealed. I didn't know Blaze at the time. But it also was just a reflection of society. So I can't sit up here and be like, every time I get in the car, I'm listening to the most positive thing. Sometimes I don't want to go to work and I put on Tupac and it ain't the good Tupac. Or I put on whatever, but I also have to stay tapped into it in order to understand where my kids are or my grandkids are or kids in youth ministry are. They're listening to it. So is it harmful? Can it be? Absolutely. Do they understand what they're doing as far as executives and them kind of taking something from us? For sure, we can go off on a deep rabbit hole about that, but I still think there is power. If you're looking for it, you can find it.
Okay.
It's a matter of just not taking whatever they feed us as far as commercial and different things. If you're looking for positive, healthy music, you can find it, but what they're promoting to us and young adults and youth,
It's the programming, right?
it's the programming.
As we
Through TikTok, through Instagram, through now just regular commercials.
Yeah.
That's, they have the power and the control in that. We actually have the power and the control, but until we realize the power and the control we have as consumers and as foundational people in it, I think it's just going to always kind of be like that.
So can we speak to that program? When we think about programming, and you program a computer, right? If you program a computer, you make it do exactly what you want it to do. And I feel as if in music today, it's hypersexual, it's hyper violent, it's hyper the language that is teaching our kids to use. We as parents often look at it as a well, they're gonna grow out of it. But then you look at the adults that it's producing as well through those conversations, and we don't really see the psychological component of that until it's too late. Like when you driving down the street and you listen to a certain beat or you listen to certain music, you drive faster. If you're mad about something and you kind of fall into that feeling, if you're going through a relationship breakup, you listen to sad music. So music has a certain level of power that we don't really tap into. We were watching that movie Sinners the other night, me, my lady, and my dad, and it was a powerful scene in there to watch how music moved throughout the generations and how powerful it was in each generation. And then it was used, in such an evil manner in that movie. But it goes to speak to the power of what it can do. And then we think about the 60s and 70s when they started seeing music be used in a positive. Now, I ain't gonna say the community, but another community decided, we're gonna take that and use it against them. And we're gonna make money off the top of it. So, Blaze, what you think about it?
Man, so many things that are going through my head just listening to what you guys were talking about. And the first thing that comes to my mind is how healing music can be. It doesn't always have to be, the negative aspect of what people are dealing with and what people are experiencing. What people do is like, I'm like you, Jamal. I'm going to listen to pop when I need to listen to pop. Sure. But for every pop, I'm also going to listen to Lauryn Hill or Brand Nubians or Tribe or whatever is going on. So the thing about this is, speaking as someone who has been through divorce, who has had suicide ideation, suicide attempts, hip hop got me through what I needed to get. Like before I changed into this one, I had a shirt that said hip hop and therapy saved my life. And what generally comes to my mind is you think of someone like Lauryn Hill. When she talks about X Factor, she says, it could all be so simple, but you rather make it hard. Loving you is like a battle, and we both end up with scars. And so one of those things, when you think about that, it's like, daggone, okay, is she the one hurting me? Am I the one hurting her, or are we hurting each other? In the beginning, I thought it was just her hurting me. But then once you start looking at it, you start doing that healing journey, you start recognizing the toxicity that you have in these relationships too. You can start looking at yourself. It's like, oh, I was the problem too. And so now I love how Chulo said, everybody, you got a playlist now. You can play whatever you want to play. You don't have to listen to the same old thing. You know, when we was growing up, we had to listen to what was playing on the radio because we didn't have all these options. You know, and so and we think about how the programming of our children. You know, I was driving up here and I was listening to Dog Style by Snoop Dogg. That came out when I was in 8th grade. You know, and now let's be real. I always thought we was gangsters when that stuff came out because that's what was popular at the moment. But at the same time, we also had parents that's like, go out here and act like that if you want to.
It's acting like gangsters in the car on the way home from church.
Right. So, and like, that's the thing. So we also had the sense to, you know, all right, I better not act like this. My mama was going to smack me upside my head or what comes about it. Now, I have, just because, you know, I hear, you know, ain't no fun and the homies can't have none, that don't mean I'm going to go out and try to smash everything that my homies try to do. I got more sense than that. So, but kids.
Let me. Can I interject with you?
Yeah.
Because that's a great point. But how many of us don't have the sense not to?
Right. That's what I was about to get to. So see, you cut me off.
My bad. My bad.
No. But
Jimmy's just rude, man.
Oh, right. Just dang. So the reality is like there are a lot of people who don't have the sense, but you got to think about the access that the kids have today. There's no off switch. They can watch it 24/7, 365. There's absolutely no opportunity for them to shut down. So that's when it is when we have to step in and be like, okay, listen, this is not real life. This is something that you just see on the TV. And the people who do these things aren't living the life that they rapping about. A lot of them.
That's right.
You know, they're not living it like they're behind gated communities. They ain't in the hood like that. And you think about these folks who are really doing the stuff that they did. Would they be telling it out in the streets like that?
Well, the ones that did are in jail.
In jail, exactly.
Speak. Cut your
No, you good, bro. Go.
There was a Rod Wave said a quote. He said, "Jeezy told us to trap or die. He told his sons go to college." Right. Mm-hmm. So that's very powerful because they're not even living like the poison that they're peddling. So I just wanted to add that to you.
Yeah, and like that's the thing. So it's up to us to be able to do that, and like having spaces like this, not only spaces like this, but also getting your kids involved in like things like the Boys and Girls Club or after school activities or sports or whatever to try to deter them from them. Because instead of us, Jimmy said it earlier, community is the thing that's needed. Not just among black men, but black boys, black girls as well.
Black families,
period. And I think that's one of the things we also got away from. We don't have it like we used to.
Okay, so cool. We've discussed the problem now. What are the solutions? And everybody in here, we have an idea what a solution can be. One person's not going to figure it out. That's why we're here as a community to start having collaborative conversations about what are the solution-based answers. So, if anybody in here would like to speak on that, we can give you an opportunity over here on the mic to have a comment and try to limit it to 2 minutes if you don't mind.
Said 2 minutes like it's a funeral. 2 minutes. I think for projection purposes, I think it's probably best to stand there so we can catch you on everything.
That's a great point. Talking about how music affects us. My children are older now, but when they were smaller, I might be in the car listening to Tupac or whatever, right? But when my kids got in the car, I changed something else, man. Mm-hmm. So I say that to say we got to be critical consumers of what we listen to, what we allow our children to listen to. Are they going to listen to it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But I'm not going to help facilitate it because I want them to be conscious. Everything that's said is not okay. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we're in a society now that tries to make everything okay. Because I'm 62, and some of the stuff I listen to, I'm like, man, I can't hardly listen to it. It's like there's a couple of female rappers that are like,
out of this world,
out there, man. Yep. So I tried to shield my children from that. As far as the answer, I think we got to start that at home. You know, and like I say, be critical consumers and try to get our children and our family members to be critical consumers of what you listen to, what you watch, what you expose yourself to. Because everything that's available to you, and like you mentioned, that social media never cuts off. But start at home with it. You know, when the kids get in the car, you might feel some pop. Man, you got to cut pop off, right?
That's
You
right.
know what I mean? You know, so we got to start at home, fellas.
All right, thank you, Vince. I appreciate that, man. And also, as Vince just said, you know, you can shield your kids, but you also got to explain to them. You know, we didn't have a lot of explanation. It was like, don't do that. You know, why? What's the why behind it? And because you hear something, it get into your spirit, so to speak. And you, like you said, you driving and you hearing something, and you riding and you enjoying it. Next thing you know, 90 miles an hour. And plenty of our kids done got tickets, and I done got a ticket like that. It's just speeding because I'm wide open because I'm listening to something that's really, you know, I'm enjoying it, but I'm not paying attention to whatever else I'm doing. So I think one of the things is as parents and as black men, we gotta give our boys more of the why, and give them not just, you know, don't run across the street, but why you need to look both ways. Because we often, you know, expect our kids to operate in a space that adults do. You know, you do better than that. No, you don't. They don't know better than that. They wouldn't be kids. They'd be adults, right? So if we start looking at it from that standpoint, you know what I'm saying?
40, 50-year-old perspective and expecting them to operate like that at 18 or 16.
Yeah, and they brain still developing the whole time.
To expound on that, I don't have any children, but
well, you can't talk then. No, I'm just,
no, that's why I said it's gonna be short. It's gonna be short. But I can expound on how I was raised. I was spoken to as a person who's going to be an adult someday. So you're gonna need to understand what you're listening to, and you got to realize it's a time and a place for everything, and it's an age for everything. That's right. Everything ain't for everybody at every time, right? And so a lot of times we get caught up when you send your child to somebody's house where you can't even monitor what they got going on there. So a lot of times their friends are a bigger influence than you are.
That's right.
So it got to start at home, right?
That's correct. That's correct. Thank you for that, Terrence. I appreciate that, Mr. Ryan.
All right, absolutely. So,
Please introduce yourself.
oh, sorry, Ryan White. My bad. So my favorite album growing up, hip hop album when I was in high school, was the infamous by Mobb Deep. Loved it. Lyrically, you know, I mean, it's violent, but I didn't grow up in that environment either. You know, so even though I indulged in the music, that wasn't the world I lived in. But I think the most influential things in my life were a different world. Was the Cosby Show. And so those were the things that were celebrated around me. And so I always saw an alternative. You know, my uncles, you know, I grew up in a military family, so there was always that. I had uncles that went to college, so there was always that. So the men around me gave me visually a different view of what manhood was. Where there's some, you know, do we have relatives who are out in the streets? Everybody does.
That's right. That's right.
But I was shielded from that. You know, when we were growing up, when there's grown folk doing grown folk stuff, you find someplace else to go and stuff like that. So I know for me, my family was very good about keeping, these are alternatives.
Shielded,
I had
yeah.
books and encyclopedias. And so I say all that to say is when we look at what solutions are, we've got to be mindful as men what we celebrate in front of our kids and what we push. And so, and then what we do. And so for me, you know, one of the key takeaways from the Cosby Show was they always had people in different careers around their kids. Like they always did. Every episode, it was always somebody doing something.
So some
you know,
perfection.
and showing their kids, like, you know, art shows, just culture beyond just what they saw. And granted, they were solid middle class, so not everybody has that access. But my parents were also very deliberate in saying, if there was a field trip, you going. I don't care where, you know.
Not if you want to go.
If you want, you going, you know, and so forth. So as dads, we've got to be confident, or not confident, that's not the word I'm looking for, but mindful of pushing our kids, not just play sports, but also to get the things out of sports besides just winning.
The lessons.
But then also
That's right.
going to the museums, going to this, going to that, and going and so forth. Because if they see us embrace it,
That's
then your
amazing.
sons will embrace it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. So what I heard you say was exposure. We have to expose our kids to more, because you think about the lessons that I look around the room and we're a group of from 18 to 60, 70 years old. And we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. The lessons that we learned were great lessons. Now we just have to add to those lessons and figure out more of the why. Again, I'm a why person. I want our kids to understand why we're giving you these lessons and how it's going to benefit you down the road. And when you look back, like the day I look back to my dad and said, man, I did not know this is what it took to be a man. Yeah. I appreciate you giving me that information because now it's useful. Or I did not know how difficult it was to be a husband or how difficult it was to be a boyfriend, you know, and knowing how to deal with any type of disappointment. Like we don't teach our boys how to deal with disappointment. We don't teach our boys how to deal with if a little girl tell them, I don't want you, I want your friend, you know. And when you hear things like this in hip hop, it always come across as negative. You know, not always, because you do have stories that's been the positive, but what we're programmed to hear is the negative 90% of the time, and that the flamboyant side of the B's and the H's and all the negative words that come with interaction with women throughout these conversations through rap. It's like our kids look at them like, oh man, we always gravitate to something that you think is cool until you figure it out it ain't cool.
I was going to say to that, the one thing that I think a lot of us forget though is sometimes we have to meet our kids where they are instead of where we expect them to be, and we're trying to give them these enormous lessons about things, and they don't have the capacity to actually accept it. Mm-hmm. So breaking it down to stuff that they can actually understand. So, you know, they're like, I love what Ryan said, talking about how, you know, watching A Different World and the Cosby Show and everything. We don't have those shows anymore. So what are they watching? So how can we take the lessons that we want them to learn and apply it to the stuff that they're watching today?
Housewives.
Right.
But that's what they left with, the clips from that, and these are what influencers. But I do have a question from I got you. But I do have a question from for me. Ron said something really important that I can relate to, right? He said he loved the Mobb Deep album, but that wasn't who he was. Mm-hmm. What draws us? Because I was brought up in church 76 days a week, Monday through Friday, Bible study. We got the brown bag at Christmas time with the candy cane, the orange. My mama had the Last Supper. I don't know who them people in that picture was. We all that. Like, I grew up and then went on to, what draws us to the violence? What draws us to that form of entertainment that we connect with, right? Because I'm not judging you, Mr. Ron, but it don't look like he shot 4 people last week. But you right. That's why I said you right. You never know. You never, especially. But it's like, I know at the time when he was 11, he didn't. But what is it about this, like about that form of entertainment that pulls us into like some of the darkest places? You know, the lower vibrational stuff. Like what is it about that draws us to that?
The simple answer is escape. The simple answer is escape. If you going to church 76 times a week, you know, and trying to do that, and that's all that you consume, sometimes you get tired of hearing that. You get tired of seeing it. You get tired of dealing with it. And it's just like, I need to experience something other than this. It's got to be something outside of this, especially if you are getting beat in the head over it. Over and over and over and over and over again, and this is all that you know. So a lot of times what people do, it's the same thing with people who smoke and who drink and do all these things. They're trying to escape the life. They're trying to escape something that they can't escape. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so that's a big reason of why a lot of us are drawn to certain things, because like Ryan said, it's not the life that he came from. This is not what he sees every day, but then it's appealing. It's something that, you know, I know I ain't gonna do it, but it would be real cool. I can say it in the song, and I can do all of this type of stuff. Or I can rap it, or I can dress it and everything. But that doesn't mean I gotta act it. It gives me that little bit of escape. But it's also sometimes it's a little bit of rebellion, just to get away from it as well. So it's just like I'm not going to do this all day, every day. I'm going to show you that I'm different.
Okay. So can we agree also it's an escape and a part of the programming? Because if you see it 24/7, just like you said, if you go to church 24/7, some people gonna fall into that pattern. They're gonna stay in church 24/7. Some people gonna rebel. But if you're seeing these images on TV, if you're seeing them, hearing them on the radio, if you're in school 8 hours a day with them with your earbuds in your ear, you gravitate towards it. So we got another comment. If you mind introducing yourself, sir.
Jamal. I agree with everything that's being said, but I think we also have to take a step back and really understand like what's really going on. There's a certain level of conditioning that's taking place, particularly in our communities, and we're being pushed this negativity for a certain reason, right? And if you're being conditioned over a certain period of time, you don't even realize what's happening to you. I'll give you a perfect example. There's a study that was done. It was on gnats. Okay, now a gnat can jump about 7 inches off the ground. Okay, they put a gnat in a jar that was only four inches high, and they covered it with a lid. The gnat would jump up, hit the lid, hit the lid, hit the lid. Then they said, let's remove the lid. They removed the lid. The gnat never jumped beyond 4 inches. Mm-hmm. But get this, the gnat had babies. When those babies were born, they never jumped more than 4 inches. It's a certain level of conditioning that takes place.
That's right.
And we have to really understand that. And how you defeat that is that it's extremely important that we condition our children on our own with their history, with their culture, to instill that positive aspect, to like knock out all that negativity. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a lot of positive stuff in hip hop too. Like when I think about hip hop, I put it in 2 different compartments. Hip hop represents culture and the positive aspect, and then I think about rap. And then rap, I put in that negative zone. Mm-hmm. I try to figure out, how do I break this out? And that's how I try to explain to my kids, right? And I think that's how we have to think about this. So like, how do we defeat it? You defeat it by countering it with enormous amount of positivity that's coming from your history. You are kings, you are queens. You're not bees, you're not hoes.
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
And
Absolutely.
if you condition your child long enough, at some point, when that negativity comes through, you won't have to tell them to turn that station.
That's right.
They're going to do it on their own. So it all comes back to what the brother just said here. It starts at home. It always starts at home. And as Black men, we have to take the lead and make sure that we point our kids in the right direction and feed them with the right knowledge so they can overcome these issues.
Man, thank you for that.
Can I ask Mr. Jamal a question?
Yes, sir.
He love that. I have a question. So for most of us and many of us who operate outside of our household, right, in community, as it sounds like you probably do. I don't know you, but I'm just going off the strength that you impact people outside of your home. What? I ain't gonna say tactic, but how do we deal with trying to present that perspective to young men and young women who aren't receptive to them being kings and queens and leaders in this, because they are conditioned to feel like
maybe living in that too.
They are bad bees and YNs and whatever else. You know what I'm saying? It's just a reality that we live in, because I operate in a space where we come into contact with these young men and these young women all the time. And sometimes it can be draining. If you ain't called to a certain group of people, you're going to burn out.
Yeah.
But my thing is now, like, getting back into the rhythm of serving and doing stuff in the community. Is there, let's say it's somebody watching now, is there something that you could tell them that can help, articulate or communicate that to a generation that just isn't receptive to that, because they're probably 2 generations removed from understanding that?
Yeah. No, that's a hard question, man. I think, a lot of it really goes back to, community programs that we have to actually start within our communities. The Black church at one time was one of the most powerful organizations in our community. And I think that maybe that's something that we should really reconsider. Like, how do we go back to the Black church and create, foundations within the church to reach out to our young people to try to draw them in, right? The only thing outside of that is to set up our own programs, man. Just set up our own programs like what we're doing today, where maybe we bring in some kids once a month and, we try to mentor these kids so that they can see, they need to see us, man. They need to see that there are things that you can do, I remember one time, I grew up in New York. I was actually come speak to some kids, and it turned out that I ended up in the worst school in all of New York City, to speak to some kids. And not only did I end up in the worst school, they assigned me to the worst class in that school. And so I'm there, I'm talking to the kids and all, and then there's this one brother, he's asking all the questions. And it turns out after the class, they pulled me aside. They said, "We can't believe what just happened. This is the worst kid in the whole school. But he was the most interested. But nobody ever took the time to talk to him about his history."
That's the part right there. Taking time with
you
our
got to
kids.
take the time. You got to try to, you reach out to them where they are.
And the why.
But you got to tell them the why. And when they hear the why, our kids are not stupid. They're really smart. It's just, they don't get access to the information.
And I want to expound on that point. When I was younger, nothing was worse than an older man who talked down to me.
Yep.
Right. And so you don't seem like the person to talk down to someone who's like, you should listen to me because you're younger. It's like, why? Right? If I don't relate to you, if I don't see myself in you some kind of way, then I'm not going to listen to you. My ears are going to be cut off. Right. But you're right. You got to meet people where they are. Right. And a lot of times, I'm going to share my business partner's story. Right. He was asked to speak to a group of young men who were, affiliated with a gang, and they were about to do something stupid. Right. So he got asked to come and say, "Hey man, like, I don't know what to do. These guys look up to me, It's about 20 of them. I need you to say something to them." So he goes in there and they all flagged up, gunned up, about to do something crazy. And he just gets in there and he talks them out of whatever they plan on doing. But he is a person who, first of all, he comes off not preachy, but it's saying, "Hey, first of all, why y'all doing this?" Right? It's like asking the questions so you can assess why you're actually doing this. And when you give somebody the opportunity to assess themselves, right, and go home with questions, then they start looking at their life differently. Because that's what therapy does, right?
That's what it is.
It doesn't give you it doesn't fix anything. It gives you the tools to go home and fix it yourself. So that's why I just
Thank you for that, man.
I agree.
I appreciate it. Okay. Come on in.
Keith Lipscomb.
First of all, Keith, before you do that, let me get your shoulders. You look strong. Can I? I need your shoulders. Can I?
Ooh, look at the shoulders.
I used to have them like that, but I ain't got them no more.
I've been knowing Jim for about 10 years. He was cutting my son's hair. And I agree with everything you guys are saying, but I think we missed the big point. What do we tell the boys that are watching hip hop, watching the rap culture, the money? And I say that because I started coaching when I was 19, fresh out of my first year of college. I came back to coach AAU basketball. Been doing, community service with kids since then. Been in corporate America for 30 years now. And no matter how much you do, I have young kids like, "Hey man, that's cool, but I'm not sitting in front of a computer all day." What do you tell the kids that are seeing these hip hop artists, these R&B artists that are flashing money, millions of dollars, and what they're talking about? I mean, because they're degrading women. You can tell them, "Hey man, you got to treat women better. That ain't the life you live. Gang banging, the whole street thing is not it." But what do you tell them about the money?
So that's the $1 million question, right? Is why we're here is to come up with collective answers to that. Because I don't think anybody on this panel is going to just answer that right out the gate.
I kind of got something specific to tell them, right? Me knowing how music works and how money matriculates through the industry, the people who sit in front of the computers make the money first. And make the most money.
Tell them about that what you sent us in that part in the chat.
Let me finish this point first. So the engineers who it seems like nerd work, but these are the guys who make all the guys who look like they have money sound like them, right? Because before they meet these guys, and they're usually white guys, right? Because we don't know that that's a job available for us to do. And we have to reevaluate what we publicize as cool, right? If we start saying, hey, sitting in front of a computer to get these guys sounding like the ones, that's cool too, right? And they make money first, and they usually make the most, right? It's usually about putting a different option in front of their faces, because a lot of I didn't know that was even a thing until I started doing music, right? And then I started saying, hey, let me engineer myself, because maybe I can engineer somebody else and I can get the money, and put it to tell them that the money that they think that they're getting is not real. It's usually funded by someone else to make them seem like they're living a lifestyle. But when they go home at night, they got to give the car back. They got to drop the girls off at home who was in the video.
Yep.
They got to take the jewelry off and send it back to the jeweler. It's entertainment based. It's not real a lot of times. All right. Yeah.
Well, I stand corrected. So
Yeah.
now we got another comment coming up.
Yeah, Terry. So first off, I'm grew up on hip hop, but I'm more conscious. So I Most Def, Talib Kweli, Black Star.
Yeah.
That was kind of
Yes, sir.
my speed. I got into the other stuff later on in life, but my mother found out and she threw it away. My dad was more so, well, if your mama threw it away, your mama threw it away, you know. So I think a lot of it, I don't have boys, I have 2 daughters. And for me, yeah, right. Yeah, they are a job. For me, I'm a big believer. So, you know, Jimmy knows I read a lot. So right now I got 2 books I'm working on. One you probably heard of, called Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. And then the other one, haven't really gotten to this one yet, Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson, which pretty much goes back to what Jamal was saying, that I think that book touches on how, pretty much the goal is not to make Black people competitive, but it's to make them subservient and good employees. So when you look at it, I'm a big believer it's how you show up.
Yes.
We can sit here and go back and forth. I had a story last night. My 18-year-old daughter was like, met some boy. She's graduating from high school soon, so I said, I need to meet him. And I'm divorced, and so she bring him by my place. He's in the music business, and I've dabbled in the music business. So I started talking to him and his boy, and he just like, yeah, I'm rapping. I'm like, okay, yeah. We just chopping it up, making him feel comfortable. After he got comfortable, I said, all right. I'm not gonna say the word I said, but I said, listen, man, don't F this up. I said, don't F this up. I said, that daughter, that girl, that's my responsibility. God holds me accountable. And when she's with you, I need you to protect her. Don't F this up, man. I said, the last thing you need to do is F this up. And I did it on purpose because, one, I needed my daughter to always hear that. Secondly, he's a young man, young Black man, Black boy, 18 years old, single mom. I don't know if his father's around. But at that moment, he needed to see me as a father, as a Black man, as it relates to his daughter, my daughter. And so again, it goes back to how we show up, because the world is the world. We've seen it all. I'm fortunate. I had 2 parents, a 2-parent home. So yeah, I listen to hip hop, but the last words I always want to hear my mother say, or I didn't want to hear my mother say, is, you know what? Wait your dad to get home. I never wanted to hear those words because you knew it's a wrap.
That's right.
So I think at the end of the day, how we show up as men, to our kids, to the community at large, because when it's all said and done with, whether it's hip hop, whether it's country, whether it's jazz, whether it's blues, it's all ours. It all comes for us. It's just like the movie Sinners. It's our stories, and that's really what we're telling. We're telling our stories, and the sad part, after X amount of years, how much more death and poverty can I listen to?
That's right.
I'm like,
That's right.
it's like
That's right.
you can't spin NWA or Wu-Tang any different than, I'm like, you can't spin that any different. I don't care where it's Young Thug, I don't care who it is. Trippie Redd, don't matter. You can't spin death and poverty any different. And so it's just how we show up and how we appear, and the work we continue to do on ourselves as individuals. I think that's the most important.
Well, thank you for that, Terry. I appreciate that.
That was dope. That was dope.
Please, you had something you want to add?
No, I love the message to just show up. I think that's one of the biggest parts. My son wants to be an athlete. It got a lot of work. but my daughter's the athlete. And so, and I tell both of them, I was like, yo, man, you don't got to play football just because I did. You know, if you're into design, I'm going to support you with design. That's how I'm going to do. My daughter, like, she was a quarterback for a flag football team, and I helped her with it until she got bored with it. Now she's doing karate. Every time she's doing karate, I'm there. You know, and that's one of those things, showing up for them, again, meeting them where they are, not where you expect them to be, and letting them be who they are. You know, and I think that's one of those things too, is I can teach them the same morals and values that I was taught. I don't have to teach them the same way.
That's right. That's correct. That's correct. Good. Hey man, this is all powerful. We got one more comment before we're gonna step into the next topic. Young man, if you don't mind, introduce yourself.
I'm Lance Whitley. Been going to Jimmy for about 4 years now.
Yeah.
So yeah, good dude. Appreciate you inviting me.
Yes, sir.
So as I've gotten older, I realize that whenever I'm listening to the majority of the hip hop, not all of it, but majority, is it just sounds like somebody stroking their own ego over a beat. So I got a question to the panel more than anything. So how can we teach young men the discipline of checking their own ego before it gets out of control whenever they get older? And then they see the hip hop, they see the rap videos, they say, because that's basically all it is. They see it, but then it's like, how can we get that under control before it's out of control?
Okay.
That goes to Keith's question, because it's like, well, they attracted to the artistry and all this other stuff because it empowers them, right? But it also bounces back to what Blaze said, because it offsets how they may really feel on the inside, right? So I was in publishing for a really long time. So I was one of the writers and all this other stuff, and I loved it. I still get money from that to this day. If you look at my artist stuff, pennies on the dollar, right? So, but that takes community. I think it kind of ties into what everybody's saying. It takes community, because how do you instill humility into somebody if it's not there? And the polar opposite of broken and bottom of the totem pole is narcissism and entitlement and everything else. So a lot of times what we see in the music and in that the idea of wanting to be the man is the fear of not being the man. Like my main reason for wanting to be seen, I was one of the most quiet, humble people. My main reason for wanting to be seen was because I felt voiceless when my dad beat the brakes off my mama. And I said, as soon as I'm old enough, ain't nobody gonna be able to tell me nothing. So I hit 19, I was getting busy where everybody came near me. And that came with, all right, everybody rock with me. They give me a free piece of pizza on campus. So it comes with something, and so does artistry, because it's a power, right? But I think what we have to do is really assess that it's going to take a couple generations for us to impact and just start saying, all right, I might not get my son, but I can work on my grandson. Because my son's, like you said, my son's going to mature. I don't know where you went to. My son's going to mature, and that stuff is only so many ways you can spin and flip things, right? He's going to mature, and my goal is to start working on the next 2 generations. I'm not giving up on mine, but how I see it is it's a perspective of power. And if we can show them the difference between a powerful man and a man with power, we win. And that kind of varies from kid to kid, you know what I'm saying, and person to person. I can't even say kid, because I'll be 43 this summer, and there's some stuff I learned last year. Jimmy, thank you for always answering the phone. It's some stuff I learned last year that I look back now and I'm like, man, it took me this long. I had to sit somewhere, sometimes in a cell, and remember stuff he told me in his chair and go, oh, that's what he was talking about. And at the time, I had the power, I had the notoriety, I had the money, I had everything. But I think the important part is in this generation, and like you said, they've been conditioned by highlight reels. They've just been conditioned by all these. I don't want to drift into another topic, but they've just been conditioned by highlight, and we have too. And if we ain't careful, we drift into that too. You trying to help somebody up, you like, well, what is this? You know what I'm saying? It's just how society has conditioned us. But I really feel like it's a power thing. You talk about young black boys who sit online and watch kids their age get popped in the back by law enforcement.
Yeah.
And then see their own friend in another neighborhood pop somebody. It's everybody. It's fear.
Yeah.
But if I'm up here and I got money and I got power and I'm adored and all I hear is affirming things, because ain't nobody gonna say nothing bad to you because you the bag. You know, you get around the adjustment, they chase that. So it's really a healing process that need to take place. But to communicate that to them is definitely going to take, you know, a community effort, because like I said, everybody's different. All these kids are different. All the men are different. And there's some of us, 90% of the rappers that most of us probably like are our age anyway. They just still talking about whatever get the check, because they got to pay the bills and maintain lifestyle, because nobody taught them to properly invest. And you got to ask yourself, why is he still rapping the same way he was rapping 20 years ago? Because that get the bag. But that should also tell you that in order to maintain this money, I got to stay at a certain place.
Yeah.
You know, because nobody's teaching them that. But I know I said a whole lot, but I feel you on that, man, because it's a perspective and it's a desire that a lot of our young men want to be in this position of power. But we got to figure out humility. It's serving, because ain't nobody going to get no groceries for nobody no more. Ain't nobody unloading the car for the old lady at the store no more.
Well, it comes from a respect factor. It's like we're not teaching respect anymore, and we're, as the older generation, we're afraid to teach that respect.